What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of MUT Tips. I'm your host, Sean Taylor from the Made Up Theater. And before we jump in, make sure to like the video, comment with somebody you would like addressed in a future video, and as always, subscribe on YouTube to be informed of upcoming videos and live streams. Ring that bell. But without further ado, let's jump into today's topic, when to say no. When you first start taking improv, on the very first day, we teach you the concept of yes and. Agreeing and saying yes to something and then adding on to it. We don't really focus on saying no. In fact, we somewhat discourage it right off the bat because beginning improvisers might be more prone to say no to ideas because a lot of times, saying yes would maybe take them out of their comfort zone a little bit because that's when you really start improvising and getting into characters and improvised relationships and things that you may not be prepared for. And that's what improv is about, not being prepared and just going with the flow. So yeah, we say yes and, but that doesn't mean that saying no is something you cannot do in improv. So let's get into a few ways that you can say no and when you should say no. The number one reason to say no on stage 100% comes down to responding to a choice that makes you feel uncomfortable. If your scene partner makes a choice that is, for example, sexist, racist, homophobic, transphobic, or just in any way inappropriate either to you or to anybody, then you're fully within your right to say no, okay? A choice on stage in improv is a contract. That does not mean it has to be 100% accepted, especially if it's out of line. So if it violates your comfort zone or, is just distasteful to others, then you 100% should say no. And some other choices might come down to trust within your group. So for example, like kissing, some improvisers will kiss on stage. Like for example, I'm, friends with Bobby. I perform in shows with him a lot, and we do kiss on stage because we trust each other and we kind of have that contract with each other that it's okay. But I would never kiss someone who I just started performing with, That is something that is built on trust, and I'd even say it's built on a conversation that you have with each other, okay? So never assume that it's okay to do everything unless you have that conversation with your fellow scene partner. I do encourage you to have those conversations because then you will know boundary lines and you never want to cross them. But if someone does cross your boundary line, then you are fully within your right to say no. Before we jump into other reasons to say no in an improvised scene, we need to know the difference between saying no and a denial. Because a lot of people don't say no because they think it's a denial. And a denial is, voiding out a choice out of existence and just saying no to the reality that was just established. So an example might be if my scene partner came in and said, "Wow, I can't believe we finally arrived at space camp." And if I came on stage and said, "What are you talking about? This isn't space camp, this is cooking class." At that point, I've just said no to that choice and voided it out of existence. And it's ultimately not something that would ever be said in reality, right? So I've denied that choice. But saying no on stage comes from a character point of view, right? A character wouldn't just say yes to every single thing. That's not real life. If you look at movies, no is said all the time, a lot of times as a character moment, like a moment of growth or a moment of an emotional release. And it's very interesting. A classic example is in Return of the Jedi. Luke Skywalker says no in that movie a few times, The first big moment where he says no kind of comes in the form of him saying never, when Darth Vader essentially says, "Oh, well, if you won't turn to the dark side, perhaps your sister will." And he says no by saying never because he is, angry in that moment. He's just filled with rage. And then a few moments later, he says no to joining the dark side to Emperor Palpatine. And that's another big character growth moment because he kind of releases the anger that he just had. So that kind of provokes a big moment of growth for that character. That's why no can be very strong and powerful in scenes. Saying no in an improvised scene ultimately comes down to knowing your character and knowing their point of view and just feeling like, what would they say in response to an offer? So an example of this is maybe you're playing in a scene like a young teenager, like maybe a teenager who's new to a school, doesn't have a lot of friends, and then you see a group of other teenagers and they're like doing some bad stuff, Maybe they're doing some marijuana or graffiti, and you walk by them and one of them says, "Hey, you wanna tag this building and say the principal sucks?" And if you're like a new kid trying to fit in, you're kind of met with that moment. Like maybe you would say yes, because even though you know it's bad, it might lead to something, right? It could lead to, getting friends. It might lead to a fun moment where the principal maybe discovers that you have been graffitiing on the wall. That's where yes is kind of cool and powerful. But if it's like maybe later on in the story and you're a different type of character, like you play by the rules and you don't want to do that, you would say, "No, I'm not going to tag that. In fact, I'm going to report you to the principal." That's a character moment, right? That equally can promote just as much fun. So it's ultimately down to knowing your character, knowing their emotional point of view. And saying no should come from an emotional place, because if it comes from an emotional place, it will cause the scene to still progress rather than just stop dead in its tracks. We don't want to say no on stage just to stop and delay action, right? We don't want our scenes to be like, "Oh, hey, what do you want to do tonight? Hey, we could go see a movie." No, that's a no that's like, there's no emotion in it. It's just kind of like apathetic and lazy. But if someone said, "Hey, what should we do tonight? Hey, let's go see a movie," and you put emotion into, "No, I told you, I'm done seeing movies. You keep trying to get me to see lousy, shitty movies, and I'm sick of it. I want to watch Casablanca or Gone with the Wind, but you want to watch some shitty Kevin Hart movie." Something like that, right? It's just kind of like coming from an emotional place, and it does now provoke a response in the person who gave the offer. So try saying no right now using a different emotion. Like say no, but say it happy. Go. Now say no, but say it like sad. Go. Now say it angry. Go. Now say it like relieved. Go. There's so many different ways that you can say the word no and attach a different emotion to it. We think of no as kind of a negative response, but it can also be like, like it could be something you say when you're happy or relieved, right? Like maybe a boss comes in and he's like an asshole, a jerk, and he's like, "Hey, I want you to take this load of new accounts. Go ahead and call all of them. You have until 5 p.m. Better get started. There's 300 of them." And if I'm like an employee, maybe I'm just kind of fed up. But I could respond and be like, "No," and be angry. But I can also just be like, kind of confident and be happy or relieved as I'm saying it, because I'm now like saying, "No." I'm like taking control, and I'm relieved that I'm now taking control and relieved that I'm standing up to this antagonistic character. So attaching an emotion to the word no is a great way to not make the scene just stop dead in its tracks. It pushes it forward. A great way to practice this is to do a two-person scene where one person initiates the scene by just giving an offer. It could be a positive offer, a negative offer. Again, something that's not meant to make your partner feel uncomfortable, but still just like a traditional improv offer. Like it could be as simple as like, "Hey, it's your 21st birthday. Why don't we go to Chili's and get your favorite dinner?" But I want your partner to respond by saying no. But I want you to attribute an emotion to it as you're saying it. And I want you to repeat no a few times. You could start subtle at first. Like, "Hey, let's go to Chili's." No. 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 And just like say no a few times, heighten the emotion as you're saying it, and like settle in on what the emotion is, and then respond to that offer, but use it as it's still technically yes and, because we're expanding upon this idea, expanding upon my emotional reaction. I'm showing like, like a little bit of frustration, some, sense of maybe some sadness in me. And, I'd be like, no, look, I'm 21 now. I can't just keep going to Chili's. I'm a man, I'm an adult now. I think it's best that we never go to Chili's again. And that emotional response would cause something in me. Like maybe I'm the father to this 21-year-old, and now like I'm feeling like my child slipping away from me. He's an adult, no longer my baby boy. So that can be an interesting scene that is provoked from no. Okay? So try that out. Again, when your partner responds, they say no, let them take time to just don't rush it. Don't rush it. Repeat no a few times, get into the emotion, and then now you have the context because you have the emotion. You get to now justify why you're saying no to an offer. And notice it still progresses the scene. We can have an interesting scene about like a father-son relationship, slipping away into adulthood. That's interesting. So try that out. Try practicing starting scenes where the first response is no, but it's progressing the scene forward. Think of this as no K. I've heard it referred to as such, no K. Like you are technically saying yes as an improviser, but you're saying no as the character. And that concludes this episode of MUT Tips, everybody. Thank you so much for checking it out and checking out all the videos from last year. Happy New Year, everybody. It's been a tough one, but hey, we're still here. We got through it. Let's keep moving forward. Visit madeuptheater.com for information about our online shows and classes. We're teaching everything online right now, so you can take a class from us at Made Up Theater. Also, follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, subscribe on YouTube again. Ring that bell because we're doing live stuff. In fact, on December 23rd, I did a live MUT Tips episode. Yeah, it's 3 hours long and it's all about musical improv, so you can check that out. It is in our videos tab. But other than that, I'll check you out next time for another episode of MUT Tips. Bye!